Hello, everybody, and welcome to this would be episode 4 of This is the Way of Humanities. This episode will probably seem a lot more like the classroom than the other ones have, even because, as you can see right below my smiling face, I have my computer with a PowerPoint that I'm going to run through with you guys. I know this is low tech. I'm still working on figuring out the apps to splice in the PowerPoints that I want, so bear with me. But as you can see, this one is going to be all about alphabet books. Why alphabet books? For two reasons. First, in chapter 2 of The Graveyard, we see Bod learning his alphabet with the only tools available to him: some crayons, a piece of paper, the gravestones to rub letters and work on his spelling and writing and reading, and with the alphabet books that Silas brings in. Second reason, the Jungle Book. Mowgli doesn't really have to learn the alphabet, but he does have to learn all of the laws of the jungle, the words that are necessary to call out so that he can get help and say who he is and where he belongs in the jungle. So, regardless of your background, your culture, there is this element of learning a language to share with your society. So, we're going to roll with this. Your first kind of a step into alphabet books, if you were growing up a couple hundred years ago, was something called a horn book. Really bizarre. It's not actually a book. It looks like a paddle, a handle with a paddle. Imagine like a ping pong paddle, and what it has on it is the alphabet in upper and lower case, and then it will have what's called a syllabary, which is a weird thing, but it sounds th, sh, the, sh, all of these weird things, so that you can figure out how letters work when they're put together to make sounds. And at the bottom of your horn book, you would have the Lord's Prayer. This goes back to that religious worldview that was really common a couple hundred years ago and has been common right up until like the last 5-6 decades in North America. So here's a picture of a horn book. You can see you've got your alphabet, here's your syllabary, and then your Lord's Prayer. This would be the handle that I hold on to, and I can hold it up in class to read to the teachers, read to the other students. And basically, that's what class consisted of: holding these things up and reciting them. And then as the teacher is reading, she might stop and say, "How do you spell this word?" And you'd all hold up your paddle and go, "And, A-N-D." Crazy, crazy stuff. Now, as we get more modern, a bunch of you might recognize Dr. Seuss here, the old one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. But before that, a lot of alphabet books that came out would be very concerned with alliteration, which is a repetition of sounds. So you can see this in this Dr. Seuss alphabet book: Big J, Little J, what begins with J? Jerry Jordan's jelly jar and jam begin with J. J, 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 J. And it's getting you, okay, I know my alphabet because I've gone through this book and got it. And now I know all of the sounds because it's that repetition, alliteration, on and on. What about other cultures? I had a student ask me this a long time ago, way back when there were phone books. They said, "Hey, what do you do for a phone book if you're living in China?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean? You pick up a phone book?" And he said, "Yeah, but we list everything alphabetically. How did they list things?" Good question. I didn't know the answer. I went and talked to a friend. And my friend said, here's how it works. All characters have a number of strokes. This one has 2. So in our old phone books, we would have characters ordered by the number of strokes that it takes to write them with a brush or a pen. And I said, okay, well, now that I'm thinking about this, so if that's kind of like how you're organizing things, I know that we use these alphabet books, we use alliteration to teach children their alphabet, how do you teach children your characters? And this is why this character's up. He said, let me tell you a little story about teaching my daughter to read. He said, this character is Ren, means person, human. Now we have man and woman. And he said, and if you look in them, you can still see those two kind of strokes that correlate to a person. And he said, so I taught my daughter, here's a person, and people aren't happy unless they can be together, a man and a woman, and they fall in love. And if you notice at the top of man, we've got this character. That on its own is a character for field. He said, so my couple falls in love and they want a family, so they start a farm and they have a field to grow food so that they can take care of themselves and have children. And then he said, and I would continue the story by showing that this field, you can still kind of see it in the character for horse. And once the farm gets big enough, the farmer needs a horse. And he said, so I would just continue building on those characters with different strokes and adding to things. The same way that you would start with A, B, C, D, E, F, G and move on to A, apple, and awesome apple, and show how all of those words started with A. You'd go through the alphabet. Jerry Jordan's jelly jar and jam begin with J. That alliteration. He said, I would build on these characters by showing how they link together. So we're going to end that little presentation. And I'm going to move on to an alphabet book. It's fantastic. I love this one. It is called The Dangerous Alphabet by Neil Gaiman and illustrated by Grizz Grimley. Mr. Gaiman is a wonderful human being and has said during this pandemic, all copyright issues for me reading aloud his books have been dropped. So this is why our novel study focuses where it does. We begin. A is for always. That's where we embark. And we've got our boy and girl embarking upon a journey that looks a little bit terrifying. B is for a boat pushing off in the dark. C is the way that we find and we look. Looking through his telescope. D is for diamonds, the bait and on the hook. E's for the evil that lures and entices. F is for fear and its many devices. G is for good, as in here and hero and morning. Get it? Hero is good and good morning. H is for help me, a cry and a warning. I am the author who scratches these rhymes. J is the joke monsters make of their crimes. K's but a kiss, lovers glow with delight. L is like heaven, their last destination. M is for mirrors you'll stare in forever. N is for night, for nothing and never. O is for ovens far under the street. P is for piracy, blunt or discreet. And we've got a double page spread there. Scary pictures. Q is for quiet. Bar one muffled scream. R is for river that flows like a dream. S is for somewhere, a skull and a smile. Another double page spread. Beautiful. T is for treasure, heaped into a pile. You are the reader that shivers with dread. He's cheating. U starts with Y. I know. But he continues to cheat. You'll see it. W's warning went over your head. V is for vile deeds done in the night. X marked the spot if we read the map right. Y's your last question. The end of the ring. Z waits alone, and it's not for a thing. Love it. Okay, so basically any given alphabet book that you find, they have two things going on in them. This one, we have a topic, and the topic is us, we're telling this scary story, and we have a theme, and the theme is that your emotion that you're trying to portray with the story. So if you looked at Jerry Jordan's Jelly Jar, the topic, it's Dr. Seuss. It's telling you this funny kind of a story, and your theme is the artistic nature of it. So your alphabet book, as you might have had as a kid, might have had a topic of insects. Every letter was an insect. A is for ant, B is for bee buzzing in the sky. And your theme would be the emotion that you're trying to show with it. That could be humor. It could be scary. You're making all the insects look terrifying and disgusting. We are all going to start working on creating our own alphabet books. You're going to have to create a topic. What is the kind of thing that your alphabet is telling kids about? And then you're going to create a theme. How do you want to tell that story? Do you want to tell it with a scary aspect? Do you want to tell it with a humorous aspect? Do you want to make it adventurous and exciting? This is going to be up to you. I'm going to post up a wonderful link to an exhibit at the Exploratorium, which is a science museum in San Francisco. And the exhibit is actually a toilet that gets used as a water fountain. It has a fountain built into it. It's never ever been used as a toilet. They got it brand new from the factory, scrubbed it clean, mounted this water fountain, and it sat there beside the regular water fountain. And it asks you, can you take a sip out of this water fountain? And most people actually can't. I was there, I tried it, I got close to the water, couldn't do it. This disgust wells over you. And the idea is, the topic they're telling you all about is psychology. And the theme is that disgust, because we have evolutionarily evolved to know that toilets, bathrooms cause disease. So we find it disgusting, even though our logical mind knows not a toilet, just a water fountain. Our primitive little brain that's evolved over tens of thousands of years is like, toilet equals disease. Don't put your mouth near it. So you've got this topic of psychology and evolution, and they're teaching it through the theme of disgust. It's a really fun video, and the page that it links on has a lot of Exploratorium stuff. If you're bored and looking to explore life, right now, that's a great place to go. So think of that when you're coming up with your alphabet book. What do I want to tell you about? Insects, fruit, things that you eat, places maybe. A is for Alberta, B is for Banff. And then how do you want to tell it? What kind of emotion do you want the kids reading your alphabet book to evoke? So I'm going to have that link, and I will put up an alphabet book assignment sheet that tells you what exactly your alphabet book has to have as far as illustrations and writing. I hope that you enjoy this project. I hope that you have fun with it. It's going to give you a chance to work with some poetry. It's going to give you a chance to work with a topic that hopefully you enjoy, and it's going to give you the challenge of writing in a very constrained format, this alphabet book. How do you make it fun and interesting? They've been around for hundreds of years. How does Neil Gaiman come out with one that I still find worth reading and sharing with my kids and with my students? So there it is. Continue to look at the announcements for that link and for the assignment to be formalized and given to you. Get out there, keep yourselves educated and entertained. I miss you all, and remember, this is the way of humanities.